The fairground was alive with music, laughter, and the smell of fresh popcorn drifting through the air. Children ran around with colorful balloons, couples walked hand in hand, and families stopped at stalls to try their luck at winning stuffed toys. In the middle of this cheerful chaos, a girl wandered from one stall to another, enjoying the energy of the evening. She wasn't in a hurry. She simply liked watching the lights dance and listening to the sounds of joy echoing all around Dot as she moved past the carousel. Her eyes caught sight of something that didn't fit into the happy picture. A small boy stood frozen near the ride, his little hands clenched together, his eyes darting around with fear. His cheeks were red, and it was clear he had been holding back tears. People rushed by, too busy with their own excitement to notice him. Some glanced for a moment, but walked away, thinking it wasn't their concern. But the girl stopped. She couldn't bring herself to walk past the sight of a child so obviously lost and scared. She stepped closer, and bent down so she could meet his eyes. In a gentle voice, she asked if he was all right. At first, the boy didn't respond. He looked at her nervously, unsure if he could trust a stranger. She smiled softly, telling him she just wanted to help. After a few moments, his guard dropped, and he whispered that he couldn't find his mom. The girl's heart sank a little. She imagined how terrifying it must feel for such a small child to be separated in a sea of strangers. She told him not to worry, that she would stay by his side until they found his mother. The boy didn't say much, but the way he slowly reached out and took her hand said enough. That simple gesture was a sign that he trusted her more than the hundreds of strangers around him. The girl squeezed his hand gently and told him everything was going to be okay. She guided him away from the carousel, looking around to see if anyone was calling out for a child. But no one seemed to be searching. The fair was busy, and every direction looked the same with flashing lights and crowded paths. The girl tried to keep her own voice steady so the boy wouldn't sense her worry. She asked him what his mom looked like, hoping that would help. The boy said she was very busy and that she often had people with her. He didn't know where she had gone. His words were vague, but they hinted that his mother wasn't the kind of person who could blend easily into a crowd. Still, the girl didn't press him for details. All that mattered was keeping him calm. As they walked together, the boy's steps slowed and he looked close to tears again. The girl quickly noticed and guided him toward a food stall. She bought him a small treat with the little money she had, handing it to him with a smile. His face lit up, and he took a bite, forgetting his fear for a moment. That small act of kindness was enough to keep him steady, and the girl felt a sense of relief. They walked past rides and rows of flashing games, the girl constantly scanning the crowd for any sign of a frantic parent. She thought surely someone would be looking, maybe shouting his name, but there was nothing. The boy stayed close to her, holding her hand tightly as if afraid to let go. People noticed them, some with curiosity, others with indifference, but no one stopped to ask if everything was all right. The girl found herself talking to him, telling light stories about how she once got lost in a supermarket as a little child and how scared she felt, but how someone helped her too. The boy listened carefully, and it seemed to calm him. Slowly, he began to trust that this girl wasn't going to leave him until he was safe. He asked her shy questions, and she answered with patience, keeping his mind away from his fear. Hours seemed to slip away. The bright lights of the fair glowed even stronger as the evening grew darker, and still no mother appeared. The girl tried not to show her own concern, but inside she wondered why no one had come forward yet. She thought about taking him to security, but every time a guard passed, the boy held her hand tighter, as if begging her not to let them take him. He had chosen her, and she understood what that meant. She wasn't going to abandon him just because it was easier to pass him off to someone else. So she stayed. She walked slowly with him through the fair, keeping her eyes open and her heart steady. The boy leaned on her as though she had always been there for him, and she realized that sometimes, in moments like these, a stranger could mean the world. The fair around them was full of joy and noise, but for the girl and the boy, it was just about finding safety in each other's presence. By the time they circled back toward the main entrance, the girl had made a quiet promise to herself. No matter how long it took, she wouldn't leave his side until his mother was found. She didn't know yet that this simple promise would change her life in a way she could never have imagined. Asterisk. The girl held the boy's hand as they moved further into the fairground, the lights flashing around them like stars against the darkening sky. The boy's small steps were quick, as if he wanted to keep up with her pace, but his grip on her hand stayed tight. He was still afraid, though he tried to hide it. She noticed how he scanned the crowd now and then, his eyes searching for someone familiar, but his hope seemed to fade with every passing minute. The fair was so big, and everyone looked busy enjoying themselves. She spoke softly, asking him if he remembered where he had last seen his mother. He shook his head. He only remembered holding her hand near the entrance, and then she was gone when the crowd pushed through. The girl felt her chest tighten. It wasn't unusual for kids to get lost in such places, but usually, parents would be frantically looking. This was different. It was as if no one was looking for him at all. Still, she tried to stay calm for his sake. She guided him toward one of the food stalls, where a kind vendor let her ask if anyone had reported a missing child. The vendor shook his head and suggested she go to the main information booth. The girl thanked him and decided to make her way there. As they walked, she noticed how the boy's eyes lit up when he passed a cotton candy stand, so she paused and bought him a small piece. He smiled for the first time that evening, the pink sugar sticking to his fingers and face. It made her heart feel lighter, seeing him smile again, even if just for a moment. They continued weaving through the crowd. The girl stopped at a couple of game stalls, asking workers if anyone had been searching for a child, but each time the answer was the same: no one had reported it. The boy stayed close, sometimes tugging at her sleeve, sometimes asking in a soft voice if they were going the right way. She reassured him every time, telling him that as long as they stayed together, everything would be all right. Hours slipped by faster than she realized. The fair's bright colors now glowed under the night sky, and the noise of laughter and rides filled the air even louder. She glanced at the boy. His shoulders slumped a little, his earlier fear returning as the night grew late. To keep him calm, she told him stories, making up simple tales about children who got lost, but were always found in the end. He listened quietly, clinging to her words as much as her hand. At one point, they passed a small bench near the Ferris wheel. The boy looked tired, so she sat him down for a moment. She asked if he wanted water, and when he nodded, she quickly bought a bottle from a nearby stall. He drank slowly, his eyes following the spinning Ferris wheel, its lights reflecting in his wide eyes. The girl sat beside him, watching the people go by. Some glanced at them, but no one stopped to ask questions. To the crowd, they probably looked like siblings, just another pair enjoying the fair, but she knew the truth. This child was alone, and she was the only one who noticed. She felt a sense of responsibility growing inside her, stronger than before. She couldn't let him down. She thought of taking him to the security post, but every time she mentioned it, he grew tense and shook his head. "Please, don't leave me with them," he whispered. She looked at him and saw the fear in his eyes. He trusted her, and that trust was something she couldn't ignore. So instead of forcing him, she decided to keep trying on her own. She walked with him past the fair's main street, scanning every corner. Her eyes searched for someone, anyone, who might be frantically looking for a boy. But still, there was no sign. The boy's earlier words returned to her mind. His mom was very busy. Busy enough to let her child wander alone? She didn't understand, but she pushed the thought aside. What mattered now was the boy's safety. As the evening stretched on, she noticed something else. The boy wasn't just scared. He seemed used to being overlooked. He didn't complain much, didn't cry loudly, and accepted things quietly, as if he knew not to expect much attention. That made her feel even more protective of him. She promised herself silently that she wouldn't walk away until he was safe with his mother. Again, when they finally reached the main information booth, the small desk was crowded with people asking for directions and help. The girl tried to explain the situation to the staff, but the boy pulled on her hand, whispering that he didn't want to stay there. His voice trembled and his eyes filled with panic. The staff member suggested they wait, but the boy clung tighter to her, refusing to let go. She looked down at him, saw the trust shining in his little face, and made her choice. She told the staff she would keep looking herself. The night grew deeper, and the fair felt even bigger now. But the girl wasn't discouraged. She held the boy's hand more firmly, walking with determination. Every step she took, she reminded herself that kindness wasn't about convenience. It was about standing by someone when no one else did. And though she couldn't know it yet, the choice to stay by his side was about to lead her to an encounter that would change both of their lives in ways she couldn't imagine. The fair was alive with brighter lights as the evening settled deeper into night. Music from the rides mixed with the sound of laughter, yet for the girl and the boy, the crowd felt heavier, the noise louder, and the search longer. She had been holding his hand for hours now, never once letting go, and the boy clung to her as if she was the only anchor he had. His small fingers pressed tightly against hers, showing his fear even when his face tried to stay calm. The paths around them grew more crowded as more visitors filled the fair. Couples jostled past, children ran excitedly with candy, and performers sang on small stages. But for the girl, everything blurred into one thought: finding his mother. She noticed the boy's steps slowing again, so she bent down and asked softly if he was tired. He gave a small nod but didn't complain. She could see how much he was trying to be brave. To comfort him, she told him they could rest for a moment, but he shook his head quickly. "No, we should keep looking," he whispered. They passed a row of bright game stalls where people cheered loudly every time a prize was won. The boy stopped and stared for a second, distracted by the flashing lights and sounds, but then pulled her hand again, as though remembering their mission. She admired that determination in someone so young. Still, she could sense his energy fading, and she wanted to distract him from the fear creeping back into his mind. She started talking to him about little things: how the rides looked from far away, how the smell of popcorn filled the air, how she once tried but failed to win a toy at a fair. He listened, sometimes smiling faintly, sometimes just walking silently beside her. The stories seemed to help him keep his mind busy. At one point, she pointed to the Ferris wheel glowing high above. "Imagine seeing the whole city from up there," she said, and for a second, his eyes widened with wonder. Then they dropped again, and he asked softly, "Do you think my mom will find me soon?" Her heart twisted at the question. She gave him the most reassuring smile she could manage and told him, "Yes, she will. We just have to keep moving." She didn't let him see the doubt in her own mind. As they walked further, they came across a pair of security guards near the ticket booth. The girl hesitated, thinking maybe it was the right time to ask for help. But before she could speak, the boy squeezed her hand hard and whispered, "Please, don't make me go with them." His voice was filled with panic, his eyes wide with fear. She froze for a moment. She didn't know why he was so scared of them, but she couldn't force him into something that made him feel unsafe. She nodded and kept walking, telling herself she would find another way. The fair seemed endless, the crowd pressing from all sides. She began to feel the weight of responsibility, but she refused to let it break her. Every time the boy stumbled or grew tired, she slowed down, making sure he stayed steady. A few strangers noticed them, some offered quick smiles, others glanced with curiosity, but no one stopped to ask why a girl was guiding a boy through the crowd so late in the night. To everyone else, they must have looked like siblings. Only she knew how heavy the moment really was. The boy grew restless, his voice trembling as he said he was afraid his mom had forgotten about him. The girl stopped and crouched, so she was eye level with him. "She hasn't forgotten you," she said firmly. "Sometimes people get lost, but they always find their way back. And until then, I'm not going anywhere." Her steady words seemed to calm him, and he nodded, wiping his eyes with his sleeve to cheer him up. She bought a small toy from a stall using the last of her coins. She gave it to him, saying it was to keep him brave until they found his mom. His face lit up for a moment, and he hugged the toy tightly. That little smile gave her the strength to keep going. As the night pushed on, she realized just how unusual this was. Normally, a lost child would have been reported or reunited by now. Why had no one come for him? Why did he seem so afraid of being handed to anyone else? She didn't understand, but she pushed the questions aside. She had promised to keep him safe, and that was all that mattered. Just as her thoughts swirled, a commotion stirred near the edge of the fair. A group of men in suits began moving through the crowd, their presence sharp and different from the joyful faces around them. People stepped aside as they walked, whispering in low voices. The boy tugged her hand suddenly, his eyes wide not with fear but with recognition. He pointed quickly toward them, his voice breaking with excitement. "That's them. They're here." The girl's heart skipped a beat. She didn't know who they were, but from the way the crowd reacted and the serious expressions on the men's faces, she knew this was no ordinary reunion. Something about the way they carried themselves felt important, almost like they belonged to another world entirely. She held the boy's hand tighter, preparing herself for whatever was about to happen. She had no idea that the moment she turned to face the group approaching would open the door to a truth she wasn't expecting at all. The girl's breath caught as the group of men in suits drew closer. Their serious faces and polished shoes didn't match the carefree atmosphere of the fair. The boy's grip on her hand grew tighter, but this time it wasn't out of fear, it was relief. His small voice broke through the noise of the crowd as he whispered, "They're here." She followed his gaze and saw a luxury car pulling up just beyond the fair gates, its headlights cutting through the darkness. The men moved quickly toward it, and from the car stepped a woman dressed elegantly, her presence commanding attention even in such a noisy place. The boy let go of the girl's hand for the first time and ran forward, calling out with a joy she hadn't seen in him all evening. The woman bent down, scooping him into her arms as though she had been waiting desperately for this moment. Tears brimmed in the boy's eyes as he clung to her. The girl stood frozen, her heart swelling with relief. At last he was safe. But as she watched, the whispers around her grew louder. People in the crowd pointed, nudging each other and murmuring in disbelief. It didn't take long before she realized the truth. The woman wasn't just any parent. She was someone important, someone powerful. The woman, tall and graceful, looked every bit like someone from another world compared to the ordinary crowd at the fair. The assistants around her seemed to shield her from curious onlookers, but her focus stayed on her child. She held his face, kissing his forehead, and then lifted her eyes to find the girl standing quietly a few feet away. Their gazes met. For a moment, the noise of the fair seemed to fade into silence. The boy turned and pointed toward the girl, his little voice ringing clear. "She helped me. She stayed with me." His mother's expression softened, and she walked toward the girl with her son still in her arms. The girl shifted nervously, unsure of what to do. She hadn't helped the boy for recognition. She had simply done what felt right. But now the attention of this powerful woman and the crowd surrounding them rested entirely on her. When the mother reached her, she stopped and lowered her son so he could stand between them. "You stayed with him all this time?" the woman asked, her voice calm but carrying a weight that drew everyone in. The girl nodded quietly, explaining how she had found him alone and frightened by the carousel and couldn't leave him until she knew he was safe. She tried to keep her words simple, but her sincerity was clear. The woman looked at her son again, then back at the girl. There was something in her eyes, gratitude mixed with disbelief. She crouched slightly so she was at the girl's level, her perfectly styled hair falling to one side as she asked, "Why did you help when so many others just walked by?" The question made the girl pause. She glanced at the boy, who still clung to her sleeve as if afraid she might leave. Then she spoke softly, "Because he needed someone. I couldn't just walk away." Her words were simple, but they held more truth than any grand explanation could. The woman's face softened further. For someone who seemed untouchable in the eyes of the world, in that moment, she looked like a mother overwhelmed with gratitude. She stood again, signaling to her assistants, who quickly stepped back, giving them space. The crowd continued to watch in awe, whispers spreading faster as more people recognized who she was. Phones were raised, cameras clicked, but the woman ignored them all. Her focus stayed on the girl who had chosen kindness without hesitation. "Do you know who I am?" the mother asked quietly. The girl shook her head, admitting she had no idea. The woman gave a small smile, one that held both pride and sadness. "That's probably for the best," she replied. "All that matters is that you cared for him when I wasn't there." The boy tugged at his mother's arm, his eyes bright with innocence. "She's my hero," he said with a wide smile. His words struck something deep in the woman, and she reached out, gently placing a hand on the girl's shoulder. "Then she is mine too," the mother said firmly. The girl felt her cheeks grow warm as the weight of those words sank in. Around them, the murmurs of the crowd grew even stronger. People were amazed not just because of who the mother was, but because of the moment unfolding before them. A child reunited, a stranger's kindness recognized, and a powerful figure showing genuine humility. It was a scene that pulled at every heart watching. The mother leaned closer, speaking in a tone meant only for the girl. "You may not realize it, but what you did tonight means more than I can ever repay. Still, I won't let your kindness go unnoticed." Her words carried a promise, though the girl didn't fully understand what it meant yet. As the boy hugged her one last time before being led back toward the car, the girl realized her role in his story wasn't over. She had stepped into a moment by chance, but what she had done had caught the attention of someone far beyond her world. She had no idea that the decision to stop for a lost child at a fair would soon lead her life down a path she could never have imagined. The fair was slowly winding down, but the moment still hung heavy in the air. People had stopped in their tracks, whispering among themselves as the well-dressed woman, now clearly recognized by many, stood with her son and the girl who had kept him safe. Bright lights from the rides reflected off the polished cars, waiting at the edge of the grounds, while the murmurs of the crowd grew louder. The girl stood awkwardly, not knowing where to place her hands or what to say, still overwhelmed by everything that had just happened. The boy refused to let go of her hand even as his mother tried to lead him toward the waiting car. "She helped me," he repeated softly, his eyes wide with sincerity. "Please don't make her go yet." The mother looked at him and then at the girl, her expression softening again. With a small nod, she gestured for her assistants to step back and give them a little privacy. The woman bent down to face the girl properly, her voice calm but full of emotion. "I owe you more than words can explain," she said. "You protected my son when I failed to. People may see me as powerful, but tonight you showed a strength far greater than wealth or status." The girl shifted on her feet, embarrassed by the praise. She shook her head quickly and said, "I didn't do anything special. I just couldn't leave him alone." But the mother's eyes told a different story. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small card, offering it to the girl. "Take this," she said firmly. "If you ever need help for anything at all, I want you to call this number. No matter the time, no matter the reason." The girl hesitated, unsure if she should accept something that felt far too important for someone like her. But the boy tugged her hand again, smiling brightly, and whispered, "Please keep it. You deserve it." She finally took the card, holding it gently as if it might slip away. She didn't fully understand the weight of what she had been given, but the seriousness in the woman's tone told her it was no ordinary gesture. Around them, curious eyes continued to watch, but the mother seemed unconcerned about appearances. For once, she wasn't the untouchable figure the crowd whispered about. She was simply a grateful mother who had nearly lost what mattered most. The boy hugged the girl tightly, pressing his little face into her side. "Thank you," he whispered, and his words carried a warmth she knew she would never forget. She knelt down, hugging him back gently, telling him to be brave and to always hold his mother's hand in big places like this. He nodded, promising he would. The moment was so pure, so human, that it silenced the noise of the fair for her. When it was finally time for him to leave, the boy walked reluctantly toward the car, turning back every few steps to wave at her. His mother followed close, but before stepping inside, she stopped once more. Looking back at the girl, she spoke loud enough for those around to hear. "Remember this night. Kindness like yours is rare, and it changes lives sometimes more than you realize." Then she smiled, not as a billionaire, not as someone larger than life, but as a mother who had been touched deeply. The girl stood quietly, clutching the card in her hand as the car door closed and the convoy of vehicles rolled away. The fair's sounds slowly returned to normal, but her world felt different. She had come here expecting a simple evening of lights and laughter, and instead, she had stepped into a moment that would stay with her forever. As she walked away from the crowd, her thoughts replayed everything, finding the boy by the carousel, holding his hand through the chaos, the hours of searching, and finally the reunion. She realized something important. She hadn't done it for recognition, or for a reward, or because she thought anyone would notice. She had done it simply because a child needed her, and that was enough. And yet, life had chosen to notice her anyway. That night, when she finally returned home, the small card still rested in her pocket. She pulled it out and looked at it again, wondering what it meant for her future. The name printed on it was one that newspapers often wrote about, one that television often mentioned, but now it was more personal than any headline. She had a connection, a promise from someone who could open doors she had never dreamed of. But more than the card, more than the attention, what stayed in her heart was the boy's smile, the way he had trusted her without hesitation, the way he had called her his hero. That was the true gift of the night. It wasn't money, or status, or even the promise of future help. It was the knowledge that her choice to stop and care had made a difference that no one else could have done in the days to come. The moment might fade from the minds of the crowd who had witnessed it, but for the girl, it was a turning point. She understood now that small acts of kindness could ripple into lives in ways no one could predict. She hadn't expected it, but her life had already begun to change, all because she chose to reach out to a lost boy at a fair. And though she didn't know it yet, that simple choice would be the beginning of a story much larger than herself, a story that proved kindness has the power to cross even the greatest distances between people. And sometimes, it is the smallest actions that carry the greatest weight.